what I realized today that what you've been doing for this group is here's a group of, it's under 100 people, right? So that have been, let's just say, active Joshua listeners, right? And it's like Abraham Links, Abraham Hicks. It's like, Bash Bashar. It's like Seth, right? It's like Castaneda, right? There are all these really big thinkers out there. And I would almost to be honest, I'd throw Neville Goddard in there as well, because his premise of all of his books are that the Bible is not historical count, but it's a psychological step-by-step process on how to create in this reality. Right. So it's very similar to what Joshua's doing. And you look at the 30, let's just say Joshua practitioners out of those active listeners. And how is it now that we all come to you to begin to understand, okay, and we're talking about, we're talking about the cop, the fireman, the candlestick maker, all the different practitioners that have come to you and say, okay, I'm ready to start my course. Like, how do I do it, Rob? And you're talking about people that are doing astrology, nutrition, breath work, coaching on a life perspective, coaching on a business perspective. But what really hit me yesterday and today was that all of these people, after 2 years, right? And I'm just under 2 years of being an active, let's just say, Joshua participator. Now I'm a practitioner. We're all seem to be ready at the same time. Like, don't you find that incredibly interesting? And you're that leader, you're that guy sparking everybody to say, okay, let's help you formulate what your business is going to be. And I loved yesterday's conversation, and I think you should just include that. Like, what Google does, they call it dog fooding, right? But yesterday's call was
the first group coaching call for the course.
Was wildly. I thought it was one of the most powerful things I've ever been involved in. We had about 10 people on the call, give or take. And when Kimberly was able to present her idea to the group without any, premonition or pre-discussion, which is actually done beautifully that way, because let people naturally flow. The feedback for her, I thought, was significant. Also, the thought process that I had to go through just to be able to put my mind in her business, right? The way you set that up and the way you let it flow and the way you kept it flowing. I mean, it was an hour and a half. No one wanted to get off.
It was an amazing call, actually. I was
unbelievable,
delighted, surprised and delighted. Yeah.
Ondine, one of the callers, one of the people who have taken your course as well. She was following up with me in Facebook and email, saying, wow, that was great. This was so cool. And what she was getting was that how different we all were and how we were all adding, how, people were taking all of their different experiences and all this wealth of knowledge. And then it was honestly like going through, when we were kids, encyclopedia A through Z, where if you looked up that subject through every encyclopedia, you got a little bit different information, so you could round out that opportunity. And I had it forgotten. I developed an app about 8 years ago, and we did this dog fooding exercise, and I hadn't done it since, where you actually just present it to the internal team, and the ideas that everybody sort of thinks about it and comes up with all the possible resistance, rejections, so that you're prepared for everything. And yesterday's was the best I've been a part of. It was spectacular.
Wow.
So I would sign up for the course, and we talk about your course on the Prosperity Lab, your website, the course, and I forget the exact name of your course. What was the name of the course on your website?
I think it ended up being called Grow Your Business and Personal Brand.
So this call on grow your personal business and your personal brand, it's worth everything. It's worth its weight in gold. That, to me, that fee. And I love these calls because people get to test all that inner dialogue, those inner thoughts.
Yeah.
And while you help them form it, they then have to speak it. And we're all here, right? So well done.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. It's awesome.
I mean, I haven't been able to
really
stop
only
thinking
through
about
that coaching and as a new idea. It's not part of the deal, not at that price anyway. So so
But that to me is worth that one session for Kimberly, and I'm going to sign up my daughter Reese, my 18-year-old, with her for 2 sessions, and and she's going to give us. I said, Reese, give me, she's done this with a few different people. I said, tell us what you think. She's going to and I told her, Kimberly, she'll we're going to pay, we're going to go through the process, and then she'll tell you what she thinks.
Yeah.
And this is that kind of setting people up, and the way you get people also within the group to pay for each other's services, so we get to experience it. That just builds each other's confidence. It builds it validates, which is a limiting belief. We're working through that, right, to get rid of that need for validation. But not that the validation becomes a roadblock if we don't get it. It just becomes a smoother, right, experience that we're walking over.
I'm just making a few notes here as we go. I thought it was a really good call, and people, seem very grateful, but it's good to get that additional feedback as to what worked, what landed for people. So the call was 90 minutes, and we ran with Kimberly stuff for 75 or so minutes. And Julia had some stuff which I think is going to be really, really good as well. So I'm working on starting with that in the next call. And so I found a website from a guy I know in the States, which is kind of like, it's just like we can model a website for her on what he's done, because he's been doing similar work for 30 years and his mother for 20 years before that or something. So, and they're in business together. So I sent her the link for that. So I can see exactly how she should approach this, the whole thing. And some of it will borrow from my friend.
It's you don't have to struggle in effort, right? That's the whole idea. And it's funny, when I've been the most successful in my life, I've followed in people's footsteps, so to speak, which is what you're looking to, right?
Yeah, that's right. And on that point, I don't know about you, but I sometimes think about the fact that my biggest ever paydays in business were things like, out of the blue, I had an opportunity to sell out of a business and banked a whole lot of money. They just happened, bang. And all the attorneys were really annoyed because they'd all finished. I think maybe like Christmas was on a Tuesday or something that year. And so they'd all finished work on the Friday, but all these guys had to come back on the Christmas Eve on the Monday to finalize this big deal. And it was a pretty hairy moment, but by Christmas Day, I'd be checking my bank account. And another type of thing I was thinking of the other day, I was briefly a partner in a business. I was 50% partner in a business, and it was an investment fund. It was a stock picking fund, right? So not an index sort of a fund, but actually the guy running it was a very good stock picker. Most stock pickers really, over time, they average out to nothing, but he seemed to have a real gift. And so we did that for a while. And one day he told me he thought this particular internet service provider stock was going to really take off, and it was languishing. So it's not massive money, but I think I put $200,000 into it. And within a few weeks, I've made $250,000 on the one trade.
That's amazing.
That's
amazing.
And it was a bold move to put that money in. I had the money at the time sitting around in the bank and in stocks and stuff. But my point is that my biggest paydays were not effort and struggle doing, making little sales or anything else. They're things that came out of the blue, especially that selling out of the business. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that. So what we've been trained for, and even like the greats, Tony Robbins, Dean Grazioso, Pete Vargas, all of these people, what they teach you is that the effort and struggle that you do every day keeps you moving forward until the opportunity presents itself. So what Joshua is finally telling us, right, is, hey, there are other things you can do to grow your happiness and your enjoyment. What hits us like a baseball bat in the face is that those 20 years of struggle and effort, right, and there's 2 or 3 big hits in there, has grinded us down. It's just to the point, right? It's taken, when if we would have just sort of gone with it, been a little bit more maybe accepting, and we've pulled back on the struggle and effort, but still taking that inspired action versus the forced action and urges, we would still be in the same spot. That's the whole concept, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
the I mean, I look back now, and I'm sure you do the same thing. You could probably count all of the forced action, those urges that you acted upon. I mean, they're like clear as day in my mind. When the big
yeah.
things that blew up at you, you're like, yeah, that was not what I should have been doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. Yeah, if the energy or the match or the vibration is wrong, they do tend to backfire on you. I've read stuff. I was intrigued, and then I found some stuff that in the Joshua teachings, the teachings of Joshua.com, I found some stuff about people, for example, in business or maybe songwriters or whatever, people who seem to have kind of got onto that ability to receive inspired ideas and act on them fearlessly. And so, and I've also seen it with some guys. I mean, I'm thinking of some particular men I've met who have been devout Christians who have such unshatterable faith in what they consider to be God's, inspirations and messages for them, that they just act fearlessly. So what I'm saying is, I was always interested, how do some people seem to have that golden touch, that Midas touch? How is it that they just seem to roll from one success to another? And one guy I'm thinking of, he's a New Zealander. He's probably roughly my age, and he's a devout Christian in some relatively fundamental sect. And he just had the string of incredible successes in business. He started the whole business in New Zealand for personalized plates, for example, and he made a lot of money, and he did it brilliantly, and he had the right thing at the right time. And then a corporate bought it and just became a boring, whatever, and it lost all the pizzazz and everything else. And then he struck on this whole kind of, I think it was, he collaborated with a pianist and made this whole series of albums like Piano by Candlelight and then Guitar by Candlelight, and he just had the right thing at the right time, and these things took off. And I remember watching it, as reading about him in news or whatever, and thinking, you just seem to have this magic touch. And I suppose in his mind, the Lord, he's got unshakable faith in his religion, and he just seemed to go from, I mean, obviously he is a very intuitive marketer. He had a lot of great talents going for him as well. But it just always amazed me, his ability to, because some people are lucky, it would seem, or a one-off, they have a one-off hit in business, but this guy did it again and again and again. And so I was intrigued by that. And then Joshua talks about how some people somewhat inadvertently stumble upon the secret to it all, if you like, and seem to be able to manifest or attract incredible business events. And I guess it's really obvious with songwriters. Some songwriters just seem to know how to sit down and receive a song. And you get extreme examples like Lennon and McCartney, who could sit down and make a song together. And it was like, man, they made so many magical songs, like enduring, unbelievable songs. Most people don't realize how the Beatles changed music many times over. Like, they were incredible shapers of musical trends. But also, I watched the Elton John movie 2 or 3 times just because it's been on at various places. And I was just fascinated by his ability to bring in beautiful tunes, and he just seemed to be able to do it. And Bernie Taupin would write some lyrics, and Elton John would sit there, and this incredible, beautiful thing would come to him, and it was just one of those divine collaborations, really. So that ability to receive that creative message and take action without fear, it may be relatively easy to do for songwriters, I don't know, but a lot of writers, like novelists, get writer's block, right? Which is where they didn't understand how they got the thing and they haven't been able to progress and repeat it, or they get stuck.
Yeah.
Because I figure the solution to writer's block is just to do the entire Ascension experience from the teachings of Joshua.com, truly, or the boot camp even, right? I think any writer who's got writer's block, that would be my prescription, is take that course.
I would agree. Absolutely. For me, taking your course, and I'm getting back into your course this week, and significantly so. And I do. So when we do these coaching calls, that you set up for the Prosperity Lab, you should almost nominate somebody. Hey, present your idea, like every week.
I was thinking that exactly that, because I've been in workshops where people have done that, and then people would say, does that land for you? Does that land for you? Blah, blah. So yeah, I reckon that's a really good idea, is everyone gets to present their idea.
Because and the thing with your group is that you have such diversity in thinking and approaches to how to service people, which it's unbelievable. So for me, as I'm building and going through this stuff, and I'm doing a lot of thinking, there's sort of these 4 or 5 keys, right? To to being successful in business. And this is just us, you and I talking, right? Versus me building a course through your course, which is a lot more immersive, intensive, and sort of the framework for how to build a course. But in general, I think the successful people, there's like these 4 or 5 things you got to understand is you got people, right? What are you doing with these people? Are you engaging with people to gain money from them or to be of service to them, right? That's the first thing, right? The second thing is
yes,
right? So that's like that thinking right off the top of the bat. And I know that in my past, it's been to gain money from people. But that no question.
yes,
right? So that's the first question that we try to ask each other, right? I know you and I have gone through this so many different times where I know I wouldn't give somebody a name. Like people have asked me, hey, can I have this? I'm like, this is what I charge. You pay me and I'll give you the name, right? So, which was just a poor way of handling business, which is why none of those businesses ever really succeeded. Even just today, somebody asked me for these contacts for a retailer. I gave them everything. I'm like, hey, listen, if you really want to understand if this is the right, I'm happy to set up a call for you for free and give you all this information. But if you just want contacts, here are 10. Like I don't even care anymore. And it was funny because the guy's like, yeah, let's talk at 9. I gave him all the contacts. He's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm busy. And I started laughing. I'm like, he'll call me next week because he doesn't realize that you need so much more than just a contact name. And I'm like, you can use mine, do whatever you want, right? And I'm like, anyway, the second thing is this product or the service or the problem you're solving. Like, what are you being in service of? Are you doing something that is really going to benefit that a market, right? Or are you just looking to do something that you like? Like I constantly have people tell me, I have this great idea. This is going to be solved. And I'm like, who needs that? Like, yeah. I'm like, did you do any research? Do you have any? I'm like, that's like, oh, I'm like, okay, cool. But I'm like, I have no idea who would ever need that. Like, it's just this idea that I like it. So I'm going to do it this way. And I'm like, all right, so that's in service to yourself. Once again, not trying to be, same thing with that point number 1 of the people. Then it's your customers. Are you breathing life into your customers? Are you just embracing them? Are you so grateful? Like, wow, I get to share something with you and hopefully I'm helping you, manage that problem, right? I'm helping you get something. And then of course, the fourth, the most important is results. Is that customer, do they feel that we're gaining something, right? So like when we take your course, every step of the way, like there's just so much knowledge that we're gaining. There's so much understanding we're gaining. Those results are significant, and you could taste them. They're palpable, right, throughout the process. And then what you're also creating, which is the fifth, which is the secret, right? It's this direct communication between your customers. So what you've been able to do now, what I think is the key to success, the most important key to success, is when your customers, and you did this yesterday, become their own group.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a cult. That any brand, the greatest brands in the world, because we are the defenders of the Prosperity Lab. We are the defenders of the process. If somebody says something, well, we're not here to say they're wrong. We're saying, hey, these are the results we got, without you having to defend yourself or sell it. And if you could do that fifth one is that key. It's when those customers become they become in direct communication with each other, right? And social media gives us that opportunity. And I've done that once with one of my brands. I was able to do that with, and I remember on social media, people would say this or that, and they would come and defend us. Like we wouldn't even have to respond.
Wow.
Right. That's a powerful, and I think overall from yesterday and what I got from Kimberly, who's, it's just, it was amazing. It was that, she got all this tremendous feedback, right? That no matter what, no one person or no one individual aspect of a course could give her, but you set it up where she's now getting not only this one gift of, hey, let's build the framework for a course and my offerings, understand my pricing, understand what I'm doing. And then bam, let's have 10 people who are also building courses differently give me their opinion on what would sell them, what would make them boom. You just answered all my questions. So I loved it. And it was really powerful. Like I still am feeling it. Ondine, like I said, she was reaching out to me afterwards, just going like, wow, like that was awesome.
Wow. That's amazing. That's wonderful feedback. I was talking to Ondine about her ability to receive amazing ideas to name offers and businesses and things. And I thought that was really good. So I was saying to her, you know, you sit there and you come up with this thing and you just give it to people, but really there's a whole kind of business service in there, because she does have this kind of sixth sense about bringing in amazing ideas, but she doesn't necessarily realize that she's got this magical thing. It's a bit like with Jessica, that she's a foremost expert on dreams, but it's like, why don't you do some dream workshops? Like, that's a whole new product opportunity for you, because you've got so much knowledge. And it just came out of a discussion. Trace and I were having a chat about her website and her offers and everything else. And then when we finished, Trace said, oh, I had this dream, because she knows that Jessica's fascinated by this and always gives amazing insights. And so she talked about this thing that happened, switching between waking up and then going back to the dream because she wanted to. So, and Jessica talked about that phenomenon. So I said, you know, you could really make an amazing product out of this. People would love it.
Does Ondine have offers? I actually sent her an email asking.
She's working on that. She's working on a new approach to fear, or so breaking through fear is her big thing at the moment. But that's what she wants to focus on, and she's got a lot of really good ideas around that. So she's thinking of writing a book about that, and I think it's ideal for a course, really. She could talk to people one-on-one, but I think it would really, really work as a course. But as you know, as I keep saying to people, before you can make the course, you've actually got to road test your idea with people by talking to them one-on-one to find out what they actually want, what you can help them with, what they will pay for, and what sort of words and language that you use that will resonate with them and they use to describe it. So once you've proven it as a one-on-one thing, then you can start to look at building an email list and either doing some group work or making an online course. But it's pretty hard to jump to an online course of the group work without road testing your idea first.
Right.
So that's the sequence, because she was thinking of a book and all the rest of it. And I said, yeah, but you have to start here. And writing a book can be a brilliant thing, but it's not a starter strategy if you want it to grow your business. You might get your ideas down, but you spent ages doing that, and then what? You still haven't got anything new besides a book that nobody knows about.
It's interesting. So the one thing I've noticed about trying to take Joshua's teaching into the business. So in personal relationships, I think I've been more, I guess, adapt to embrace and act on and become a true Joshua practitioner, right? You need to do first one things, right? Like these ABCs, right? First thing you got to do is you got to accept like what is, because everything that you've already learned, you've learned in the old approach to life. So you've learned everything on a very limited basis. So if you're going to take what you've learned and have that be the foundation of what you're going to build on, well, you're building a very limited foundation. That house can only go so high and can only go so wide. But if you truly do what you and I are doing, and that's why we're on these calls, right? That's what I'm struggling with, because you ask all these great questions, and I literally go to type and answer the questions in your course, and I have such resistance. I'm like, and I have to stop, because I'm trying to take what I used to do, what I learned,
I see. Yes.
Right, and make it. And you're asking such provocative questions that say, stop thinking about what you used to do. You're limiting yourself. Open yourself up to inspiration. What could it be? Which is such a bigger question. Yeah. Right? So much more powerful.
Yeah.
It's huge, which what you're making me think about, I would have never. The course is making me think in ways, I've done 4 companies. I've raised millions of dollars. I've done this. I do it with my eyes closed. No. I did that in the old approach. Now I'm like, well, as a Joshua practitioner, how would I do this? How could I experience limitless, a limitless, and the word success is wrong, but a limitless experience, right? Yeah, I'm asking myself so much more in-depth questions because of the questions you're asking me to ask myself.
That's very interesting. I was, after creating that stuff, and it comes from the beginning of the course, where one day you get the personal branding ebook, which you read. It's like a book sounds a big thing, but it's easily read in a short period of time. It's only like 50 or 60 pages. And then the next day you get the worksheet. which is actually a surprisingly big piece of work. And like Mark said the other day, he's stuck there, but I wouldn't say stuck. I mean, he's going through amazing explorations about what his business could be and what he can actually bring to the table. So where he started from a few weeks ago to where he is now, he's made huge strides. And if he spent a month in that particular stage of reflection and then reiterating and refining, I mean, he's creating magical ideas that he would not have thought were possible prior to doing this. So, and also when I first started doing that kind of self-reflection, how are you different, and far more specific questions that we ask, but essentially we're trying to say, how are you different, like aspects of your uniqueness, and draw that out, and then identify the ones that will be of interest and value and relatable for your ideal client type. So when I first started doing that myself a number of years ago, excuse me, the post-COVID tickle goes on. So when I started first doing that, I found it very challenging, really, and I was kind of almost shy or embarrassed about it, and kind of like a little bit vain as well. And I took me a while to get to being able to authentically just state it without ego or trying to make an impression. Like initially when I used to write my bio and that sort of stuff, it was pretty kind of braggy, you know, show offy. So whereas now I look at it and I just state things if I believe they're totally true without any embellishment. Yeah, you know, I tried to really talk it up and make it seem more fabulous than it was, but actually it is quite fabulous anyway, because Trace and I've had an amazing adventurous life being digital nomads and living in India and spending a summer in France, and probably going to go to France again shortly and do some more of it, and traveling all over America and Britain, and, you know, going to Italy and Spain and blah, blah. It's, you know, Sri Lanka and all sorts of incredible places. So it is an amazing story how we decided to become paperless, you know, in our work. And before Zoom took off with COVID, to get clients used to the idea that we wouldn't be seeing them face to face anymore. Phone calls are a thing of the past, and we're just going to Zoom with you. So, you know, that story alone is interesting, and other parts of my journey that I won't go into now. There was a thing when you started talking before about the news right at the beginning. I pulled out the week 1 assignment from the Ascension Experience, part 13, and on the last page, just before the assignment details, it said something. This is kind of trivial, but I think it's also quite deep, deeply trivial, trivially deep, profoundly shallow. Anyway, they say, we very much want to improve the troubled areas in our lives, and we give so much less attention to the areas of your life that are working. And that is true, that we're preoccupied with the things that we think are not working. And you and I probably do a daily practice of that includes some appreciation and gratitude for things. But when you talk about the news, it reminded me, I know everyone says the news, all the news is just the bad news. And we all know that's true, and it's kind of a trivial cliche thing to say, but if you watch the news and if that's your source of information about the world, you could be forgiven for thinking that the world is in a mess. And a lot of people do believe that ardently. Like I noticed in some Reddit threads, people just say as if it's an accepted fact, no wonder the world's in such a mess. No wonder the world is in so much trouble. No wonder things are just getting worse and worse, you know, as if there was some better good old days. And I guess if that's your perspective, to me, watching, like, you know, sometimes people get up in the morning and they put on the TV news. To me, that's always felt like, oh my God, you've given up control of your belief systems and your emotional system to some performing person on front of a TV camera. And it's like, don't you want to own your beliefs and thoughts and energy and emotions for the day? Don't you actually, like, to me, it's like the sacred time of the day at the beginning of each day when you're fresh and new and perfect. And I just thought I was an uptight, impatient jerk for being that way. But I realized that's actually a very authentic response, because this is actually a really, really destructive way to start your day. You couldn't do much worse, really. You know, you wake up, you go and talk to your family, you feel the love, you have some breakfast, you know, might get in your car and drive somewhere. And I mean, your existence it's perfect, right? If you watch that breakfast TV, your mind might be corrupted and polluted, but your existence, if you look at your day, it's like, how amazing, I slept like that. I'm in this beautiful house. I wake up and there's my beautiful wife and my beautiful kids, and we eat this amazing food. We got plenty of everything. I get into my amazing car. I drive down this incredible road, and the sun's shining and the trees are green and the sky is blue and the birds are tweeting. And it's like, yeah, anyway, the world's perfect. It's not what you see in the news.
Well, and there's this, I mean, there's studies out there, right, that show you that the news is a fraction of a percent of what's going on in the world, right? And it's on for whatever, 3 minutes, right? Whatever the hotspot is, the world in 120 seconds, right? Or 180 seconds, whatever they do. So to your point, if it bleeds, it leads. And that's all we're seeing. So I feel the same way you are. I stopped watching the news a few years ago. And before I even got into Joshua, just because, and there was a study done, and I forget where it was cited, but in a book by Trevor Moawad, an author who passed away recently, he cited that if you watch the news for as little as 3 minutes, it increases your chances of thinking you're having a bad day by 27%.
Wow, that's amazing.
After dinner, after we clean up, we'll sit down. We try to watch the sunset, which sets in our backyard, cook dinner for the kids, sit down, and we'll just relax and watch a show, have a drink. And we were watching, and every commercial was about drugs, like what's wrong with you, right? Your investment, retirement, fear. Everything was fear. And the show was all about, it was a rerun. It was all about COVID, and the entire show people had masks. Everyone was getting sick. The world was ending, right? We know obviously it was serious, but we survived, right? And so we watched this whole experience, and she's like, that was an hour, like beginning to end, of fear.
Right.
And I looked at it and said,
yeah. So
and we hadn't watched the news yet.
Yeah. Well,
I think this is where you and I can really do something special, and I want us to talk to Gary about it as well, because I think if you could take this course to the level which this course was yesterday and say to somebody, okay, you've run companies, I've run companies, the 3 things we will never do is we will never let go of control. We would never disregard our past knowledge or experience. We would think we're always going to think we're the experts in a room. And we wouldn't accept what is happening. And we would say we could change those conditions, right? To be a good CEO, and I'm paraphrasing, right? 3 small things. These are things you're taught, right? And what we're trying to do is, as a true Joshua practitioner, is to say, you're going to let go of control, right? And your past knowledge, you're not the expert anymore, right? You're not. Your goal is to access limitless information. Like, and how do you do that, right? And then you're going to accept what's happening in front of you, right? And you're going to ask for inspired action versus trying to change control. So these are the 3 things that I'm trying to let do. Like, I'm not going to rely on my past experience. Yes, I have knowledge. Yes, it begins the question, but I'm not going to rely on it as I'm the expert. I'm going to rely on myself, that I'm going to ask myself better questions so that I get different answers this time. And I'm going to accept what's happening as perfect. And I'm going to ask, this concept is so big to me. I'm going to ask for the revealing of that missing information, because I'm looking at that situation in a partial view.
Yeah, this is a huge concept you've just touched on there, that
right,
people have an opinion about something being right or wrong, but you can, it's not hard to start to think of examples where, well, I used to think this, but then I discovered that, so I changed my opinion. So we understand intellectually the concept that you have an idea, for instance, you think something is bad or wrong in your life or in general, and then you can accept the idea, oh, well, there's some missing information. There's actually more to it than that. And had I known then what I know now, I would have had a different opinion. And so the missing information thing is part of a very big concept. And part of the, I guess that's part of the process of processing a limiting belief, isn't it? That you and I do, part of the process we use is to ask the inner self, or your subconscious, whatever you want to call it, your inner wisdom, what is the missing information? tell me some more, give me some more information, because clearly I'm missing something here. And when you process a limiting belief and ask that question strongly enough, you generally get to a point of a massive breakthrough, don't you?
100%. Well, you started this conversation when you talked about CERN. CERN's proven that the entire universe is one big energy field, and it's filled with every bit of information that's ever been known and ever will be known. It's there already.
Yeah, and a lot of it in
right.
the field
that's a proven.
right? Yeah.
I mean, that's a proven data point. Now we can accept that data point. Once again, this goes back to and say, oh my gosh, how can I truly connect with that data point? And you just said it beautifully. Ask those questions, right?
So we were talking about the idea of talking to people about this information and you wanting to share it with people and so on. And I didn't actually say anything but in that call about it. But the thing to me is that it's about just being who you are. And then sometimes people will ask you a question and you don't even need to actually refer to the Joshua material in any way whatsoever. You might just say, oh, well, there's two sides to everything. It might be something like that, where, you know, in the past you might have been totally rooted in an opinion, or let's see how this plays out because tomorrow we might have a different perspective. So like, in other words, it's more, you don't actually have to deliver a specific teaching. It may just be an offhand comment that you make. And what came into my mind was a song from school. So I went to a Catholic school here in New Zealand, and sometimes we'd have mass in the big auditorium, you know, and on the stage and all the rest of it. And so because this was the 70s and they were trying to be modern post Vatican II, they would have modern hymns, you know, instead of the old ones. And some of them were pretty corny, but one of them, which was very corny, the refrain or the chorus really struck me, and the idea is stay with me. And the refrain is, and they will know we are Christians by our love. So not by preaching and Bible bashing and trying to convert people, but to be a shining example of love. So even though it was kind of a corny song and a bit of a naff experience, the old hymns were actually better, had more power. And that message to me is like, yeah, that's it. So people will say, he's a happy guy. I wonder what's going on with him. Something like that. Or he's fun to be around. I like his energy, whatever it is. You know, the people are attracted to these things. The energy, positivity, fun, humor, accepting people. Like when you're like that, people really like you, don't they? They want to be around you because they don't know why, but they feel good. And it's because you unconditionally accept them, right? And you're not, even whatever their opinions, you accept as our friend.
Yeah, I love that. And there's another thing too that really came to me. This was a very powerful weekend for me. Was you know, my daughter had said to me, I put all this work in, Dad. I'm working so hard. I'm doing all this stuff, and this just keeps happening. And I said to her, you know, first thing is, you know, you got to change the questions you're asking yourself. Like, how is this for my highest good? And how is this going to benefit me? I'm so curious to see how this benefits me. And I also said to her, you know, right before the universe gives you everything you want, right? It's got to make sure you're not a spoiled brat. So it doesn't test you. It just gives you a little bit of a challenge. And what I mean by, you know, challenge is, do you really want what you've been asking for? And I'm going to give you a little bump in the road. And if you push past that with inspired action, not forced, right? Because urges and will just take you down a different path. But just push past with inspired action, which is always in the service of other, which is why she was on the sideline, hugging her players, helping her teammates, which is why I said that's in the service of, right? You didn't. Yeah, there's an overall theme in sports, right? This is, are you going to be selfless or selfish? So, and you're taught to be in the service of your teammates without using that language.
Yes.
Right. To your point, is you bring up a great point, because kids are, I know I could go score the goal, but I got to pass the ball because I know it, right? And you're like, I'm going to share with everybody.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's very powerful to your point. And by the way, every athlete, you know, at any level is going to be challenged with self-doubt and bumps in the road. And once you get used to pushing past those challenges, then when you get out in a post, let's just say post athletic venue, and you're in an office or a business setting, those challenges keep coming, but you're used to pushing past them. So it's not an issue. When somebody else is like, my boss yelled at me, and I'm like, everyone else is like, I had the coach bench me. Don't worry about that. But it does, right? It's interesting you say that, because, look at all of the ways the universe offers us the opportunity for expansion. And it's always the same thing. Push past fear through inspired action, by being in service of others, right? Through love and appreciation. No matter what you want to say, you just, your favorite sport, the guys that you love the most, they do that, right? It's like, man, you watch that on a team. What are the highlights? Look at how so-and-so helped his teammate, right? It's always in the midst of all the negative stuff on the news. That's the sports highlight.
Yeah. Sports a fascinating thing. I've always been interested in, I guess, the mental game as much as anything, and the dynamic of the whole thing. I wish I'd had these teachings when I was a competitive runner as a teenager, around, for example, there's two things I want to say. I just want to talk about fear versus excitement, or nervousness versus excitement, which we've talked about a bit lately. And the other thing is kind of from the sublime to the ridiculous. Is I have two observations about, just going to shut down WhatsApp because stuff keeps coming in, as it does, about newspapers, right? So the first thing that happened to newspapers was the arrival of eBay, or in New Zealand we have a thing called Trade Me, which kind of became incumbent. And so newspapers moved most of their money, we discovered, from classified ads, right? And when eBay and Trade Me, or whatever it is in each country, took that away, then they lost their biggest source of revenue. And before that, because they were paper, nobody actually knew, apart from with surveys, what they read. And that's why you had editorials, right? The editor would write this opinion piece. I guess it was an ego thing as much as anything, a persona. I'm the editor and people value my opinions, So they would write these editorials, but it turns out nobody read them, which is why you don't see them anymore, because clicks tell you everything. So the first thing was newspapers lost their source of revenue, which was terrifying. And, that was the end of their business model, really. And then news we consume, if we do now, as apps on our phones. And so we have two main newspapers here. I actually just deleted the app for one of them last night because I saw a story and this is absolutely ridiculous. I'm not exposing my mind to that sort of stuff ever again. So I deleted the app. But the point is that we now know what people will click on, right? Because of everyone reads their news as a website or an app. So therefore they know what people click on. And the common denominator just got lower and lower and lower. And so, and I suppose also people who aren't in fear may not even want to consume news in that way. They might consume, like, if I was in a financial business again, I'd be getting Bloomberg and The Economist and that sort of stuff, reading informational stories about the markets and politics, geopolitics and how it affects the markets, that kind of thing. So oil price, etc., commodity prices because of what's happening in Ukraine. But so anyway, the point is that it's surprising in a way just how low the common denominator has gone now that we know what people really do want to read in the news. It's shocking. And the other thing, I'm just going to find this image of the roller coaster, when you probably know the thing I'm going to talk about here. Images, here we go. Here's the roller coaster. I like this kind of cartoon image. It's a stock image we use here and there because, Joshua talks about the difference between excitement and fear. And what made me think of it just then was when I was running competitively when I was younger, 13 and 14, I didn't remember having any nerves at all. But when I got a bit older and it was like into college stuff at a higher level, I remember getting very nervous, and I had no method, no coaching or anything to deal with those nerves, which was, it was very unpleasant. But if I'd known this simple thing back then, it would have helped me enormously, which is there is almost no difference between exhilaration and excitement on the one hand and fear of the event on the other. So these people on the roller coaster, she was lining up for the roller coaster and she couldn't wait. Whereas he's like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to do it anyway. Like, if the thing stops and breaks down, I don't have to do it. That will be a great outcome. And so one approaches it with fear and trepidation, and the other one can't wait to get on the roller coaster and wants to do it again. But when they get off the roller coaster at the end, they probably feel the same. And the thing is, she expected a great time. he had fear that all these terrible things might happen, right? They weren't rational, but he went into it with fear, like this could happen and that could happen. It could come off the rails, or I'll lose my lunch, or, you know, a bird might crap on me, or whatever it might be. So I'm going to have a bad experience. But when he survived unscathed at the end of it, he then looks back at the thrill of it, and it's like, and the exhilaration they both feel is actually quite a similar thing. So if I'd only known when I was nervous before a race that it's only fear, think about it as excitement, and then realize that all of those fears of what could go wrong aren't going to happen. But even if they do, it's not the end of the world. So there's nothing actually to worry about. If I'd had some coaching like that, how useful would that have been back then?
Amazing. And what happens, right? Everyone looks for that one outlier story in 1942 when someone fell off a roller coaster, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. And
Well,
they
that's
use
the thing
that
is,
to to fuel their fear.
yeah. Anything else you
It's
want to
very
say
funny.
before we wrap up?
No, this was great. Like I said, I really love the way the course is developing, and I love the way that it's organically adding on, right? That the way that you've set up sort of like the Prosperity Lab, in my opinion, is truly a laboratory for businesses, where you're adding in features as to help the group really get the best product possible, right? Get the, whatever it is, get the best possible product, no matter what it takes. And that's what makes a true Joshua practitioner, right? Not holding us to a stark format where, hey, here's a framework, but we're going to bleed left and bleed right. We're going to kind of go all over, because you know what? Being a true Joshua practitioner means I'm going to accept inspired action. Inspired action may take us in a different direction. So you were inspired to have that call. I think that call was amazing. And it's just, you could just see it, right? And I think that, to me, as a business person, is the definition of a Joshua practitioner, which is not something we're taught in quote unquote CEO school.
Yeah. I'm trying to create the new approach to business or sales and marketing, whatever you want to call it. And based on those principles. So it was interesting. There's a few things happened that the more I got into making this course, the more I realized that Trace and I knew that people really needed to move past where they want to get in their business. So I kept realizing, oh, we know this and we know that, and we can help them with this and we can help them with that. My first course I ever made years ago, it was all about what I could sell and how I could justify the price. Whereas this one, like what people are getting compared to the price, it's crazy. You know, it's like with many times what they're actually, we started out charging for it. So the first thing was, I was amazed and surprised just how much information we've gathered, how much knowledge we've accumulated over the last 15 years of doing this, online marketing and digital agency and all that stuff. And then how relevant it is to people. But something that I guess I kind of knew, but what happened in that coaching call yesterday was that I asked people for their opinion in the group. And so I knew what I wanted to say in terms of how you would convey the ideas from a marketing point of view. But people in the group said stuff that I never would have thought of in terms of feedback and ideas and how it landed for them. Like Julia, you know, like, I love this and I'm going to be her client. This is exactly me. It's exactly what I need. And other people are like you were saying, well, I don't even understand half of these words. So, and then people had lots of amazing ideas for her, and that it actually became a creative process. It just took off with its own energy. It was great. And I'm looking forward to having a session around Julia's stuff, because I've got some really cool, inspired ideas around her work and where that actually goes. So, and I just suddenly talking about it, got clarity, the piece I was missing in my mind. It just popped into my head. So that's really good. So yeah, the course is interesting because the other thing I hadn't quite realized, I feel, I almost didn't want to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, is I'm slightly astonished at how effective the coaching I've been doing with people actually is, and to see them achieving breakthroughs. Like, to be honest, I had no idea I could coach people on business.
I've been saying that.
Joshua or anything.
I've been telling you that since we've been.
That's a great surprise.
We've been doing these
to me.
calls. Yeah, since we've been doing these calls, I've been telling you that. I think that I
didn't believe it. I just thought you were being nice and, you know, easily impressed.
No, I like I said, even on the call today, like and I think it's really important what Kim said. It's such an important detail that even though you have trace, right, you can talk to your partner, most of us don't. So what we have, and we have ideas, and ideas stay in our heads, and then sometimes they die if they're not spoken. So it's so important to find an avenue to speak those ideas, to breathe life into them. And you create that venue, right? Yeah, it's all the framework, all the stuff is great, 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 great. And it is outstanding. But the Pierre Resistance is you allow people to breathe life into those ideas when you talk to them live.
Wow. Wow. That's a very good point. It did breathe life into her offer, didn't it? It was a very powerful process. Yeah. Yeah. It kind of felt a privilege to be there, even though I called the thing together. It was like, this is amazing. It's a genuine.
Well, that's what a great leader does.
Yeah.
To be honest, a great leader should lead by example, not by words. And that's what you did, right?
Yeah.
I mean, today's leaders think they need to lead by words. And it's like, no, just put great people together, give them a venue, because everybody else is shutting everybody down, right? You gave everybody a venue for them to be their best. And when you do that, and great things happen.
In terms of leaders, this will be our parting comment, I think. I've been interested to watch what I'd call the dismal performance of many of the world's leading politicians. And I actually wonder if it's because that model is reaching its end point and it's no longer that relevant and they're not that important anymore. I wonder if it's actually the beginning of a whole new change. I don't know what it would look like, but like in a country, like America, which is like a talent magnet and a talent factory for the world in terms of so many things, like just look at all the incredible businesses, Apple and Microsoft and Facebook and, these incredible companies that somebody dreamed up out of nothing. I mean, it's an incredible place. And it's like, why is it so hard to find the world's best president? Like, not to criticize any of your presidents, but it's like, there are so many amazing people, and I guess they're not interested in doing that job. Same here, I suppose. It's, like they're very average. The team we've got, that they really don't have anything to contribute apart from being telegenic and saying the right thing and PR spin, but there's no substance to it. And all the things they said they were going to do, they weren't able to do because it was all just spin. And is that model dead is really what I started to wonder.
Yeah, I read an article. It was really good. It said we went from strength to intelligence, and now we're moving to heart for our leaders. And we're in this this century transitional stage, right? Because you have, let's just use Donald Trump, for example, where I have no idea, I don't know him, but he's intelligent and he's strong, right? And he has a presence of, it's just not fitting, right? Whatever it is, right? It's not fitting. You had, you had all of these different things, George Bush as well, strength and, whatever. Over intelligence, people said he couldn't read more than like one page of information, right? But there was this whole aspect of strength, and it's just not there. It's intelligence is not there.
I mean, how relevant are politicians in today's world? I kind of realized a long time ago with being in financial markets that unless a government did something really extreme or untoward, they really don't make much difference to the markets at all. The exception has been all the Western governments have been printing money, which is now let inflation loose. And how things, like, the reason financial markets are unpredictable is partly because events in the world are unpredictable. Like, nobody saw the Ukraine thing happening, the war. So when you've got the pandemic and then you've got the print money response that everybody, the countries did, ours and yours and so on, that's inflationary. And so that's one thing, right? You got the inflation and the pandemic had unexpected consequence as well. Like, we have a shortage of building materials because of supply chain issues. So the cost of building materials has gone through the roof, and we got a labor shortage like you do. So the cost of labor has gone through the roof. And so therefore home constructors are failing, not surprisingly, because they have a fixed price contract and inflated building materials and can't get labor, or the labor's sick, or the price of labor goes up. So you can see that happening. But so you got the inflation built in, you got the pandemic inflation, you got the interest rate inflation from printing money, and now we got food inflation because there's a whole lot of food issues to do with the war in Ukraine. So nobody saw any of these things happening. And then you put three together and suddenly, do we have a snowball effect? The unpredictable thing that nobody ever saw happening. So my point is that governments did actually print the money, which has made a big difference. But so unless you do something extreme like start a war or print money, like hasn't been done since World War II, in the Third Reich before World War II, unless you do something really extreme, I don't think governments make much difference to the economy or anything else really. And which I guess is to say that they probably are yesterday's concept. I don't know what the new concept is.
No, I think you're dead on. I think you're onto something big. And if you look at, if I take your words, your idea, your theory there, and I apply what's going on in the United States, I would tell you that the president doesn't matter. Governors matter. People are moving to states. It's happening all over. Like your theory is playing out in America in a very, very big way, where because the governors can now decide, especially with the constitutional decision on Roe v. Wade, states can decide whatever they want. Abortions are legal in I think 23 states, whatever the number is. I don't know exactly. I'm making up a number, but then they're restricted in another 18, whatever it may be. But now, who is governor of a state matters. People are now moving.
Oh, I see.
To those states. Well, because you also have, so the Supreme Court doesn't make law, right? It just says what's constitutional, unconstitutional. So, and if something's unconstitutional, it just means it goes back to the states based upon our Constitution. So that Roe v. Wade, and which was really, I still don't understand why it was overturned, but whatever reason was, it just threw that responsibility back to the states. So let me give you an example, right? You have New York, which is a very, very liberal state. You have a liberal DA, liberal attorney general, and that state's going through some significant turnover and turnaround. And you look at Florida, which is a very, very conservative, state with a conservative governor, conservative AG, and people are flocking to that because they're being given certain freedoms that they weren't allowed even in the most liberal states. So it's so interesting. We have people moving from California, Arizona, in truckloads. People are moving to Texas in truckloads. It's unbelievable when you start looking at what you just said is beyond playing out in America on the state level, because what happens on the federal level, nobody really cares about anymore.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Sitting here where we live in Akaroa, which is like sort of an hour and a half from the city, none of this matters whatsoever. And if you think about your life, typically none of it matters at all.
No, none of it. I say that all the time. I'm like, none of this stuff, not one decision made anywhere. Yeah, I'm paying whatever, $6 a gallon for gas, like that, but I'm like, I'm grateful that I'm able to pay it. I'm excited. I wish it was down, and I feel terrible for the families that are hurting and the people that are hurting. But for me personally, I feel blessed, lucky, and to your point, none of the circus is affecting me. I'm not, it's just not playing out.
Yeah. I mean, currently it's a thought, and you can treat the thought how you want. Yeah. Well, on that note, shall we wrap it up for today?
We will, my friend. Thank you very much for another provocative discussion. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was awesome. See you soon. Thanks, Jerry.